Another point I wanted to make, which came up earlier, which is important, which I've been making for a long time, is that there's ego and there's the authentic self. Okay, there's one and the other, but there's obviously a third entity also, which is you, because you are aware of the part of you. You are aware of and can be in touch with the part of you that has no doubt about the evolution of consciousness wanting to be free more than anything else, which is the authentic self. You are aware of the fears and desires of the ego, which doesn't want to have anything to do with wanting to be free more than anything else. That's the part of you that's making the choices. You understand? So that's why the role, we were speaking about this, I think, yesterday, about the role of choice or free agency or volitionality is so all important. Because it's not just that there's an ego or just as an authentic self. There's you, whoever you are. So it's you who's having these different experiences of your own self. Right? Does that make sense? Yes. It's not that there's only the ego or only the authentic self. It's more complicated than that. Because there's you who's bearing witness to both and experiencing both. So when you, whoever you are, give attention to the fears and desires of the ego, you begin to experience them, feel them, right, as you identify with them, and the self that you are, the I or the self that you are, becomes the fears and desires of the ego. If that's what you, whoever you are putting your attention on, that's who and what you become. Do you understand? In the same way, and this is what I was speaking about yesterday evening, if you give your attention to the authentic self and its pure passion to create the future, you begin to experience that exhilaration and that passion, right? Because whoever you are, putting your attention on that through choice and intention, right? So it's for this reason that there's the role of choice or volition. It plays such a big part in this. You understand? So the theory here, the supposition is that we all always have freedom of choice. You see? This is the teaching's based upon this conviction, this recognition, this understanding, and ultimately this agreement that we all always have freedom of choice, because you say you are not the ego, you are not the authentic self, you're that free agency that's choosing to identify with the fears and desires of the ego and then becoming a manifestation of the fears and desires of the ego in real time, or you are choosing to identify, in this case, with the authentic self or the desire for freedom more than anything else, and becoming a manifestation of that. You understand? So this teaching is completely and entirely based upon the role of choice. And it's really key, it's foundational, it's really, really, really important. And as you begin to study the science of the human psyche and how it works and how we work, the discovery and recognition of the fact that there's a choosing faculty, right, alone changes absolutely everything. This is really important. So what I have found, and I've seen this at least 1 billion times, that when you are identifying with the ego, the fears and desires of the ego, you will find yourself denying. You'll find yourself denying that there's any choice involved. Okay? And if you don't believe me, you will find this out sooner or later, I guarantee it. But I've seen this happen. So what I found is that the ego will deny when it suits it, right? Right? Without any conscience, and actually even believing itself, that there is no chooser, that there's no choosing faculty. Now, the minute that the self denies the role of choice, we can't have this discussion. The discussion comes to an end like this, okay? The lines of communication are open. The evolutionary context is dissolves immediately. And that's why this is really, I don't know how many of you actually understand what I'm saying, but it's very, very important. So a very big part of what makes this teaching work has to do with enlightening, which means bringing light to this choosing faculty in the self. Because as long as I am awake to and aware of the choosing faculty in myself, and I'm never in denial of it, right? As long as you are awake to and aware of the choosing faculty in yourself and are never in denial of it, right? The possibility to create a new world or a new being is right there. But the minute any one of us or both of us are in denial of this choosing faculty, we're locked into the old world of hell and unconsciousness forever. I can't really emphasize how important this is. So it's the bringing light to, or bring awareness to, the choosing faculty in the self is really foundational for a teaching like this to work. So in other words, if you're going to truly be able to be a free person, and if you're going to be able to manifest that freedom in your relationships with other people, it's entirely dependent upon enlightening or bringing light to this choosing faculty in the self, in yourself. Because there is a choosing faculty in all of us. Most of us are in denial of it, and it suits us, you see. If you don't want to be free more than anything else, anybody who doesn't want to be free more than anything else, or authentically interested in evolution, the evolution of consciousness, very few people actually are not going to want to bring light to this choosing faculty or choosing dimension, because the minute you do, then that automatically makes you responsible. You see, for who? For yourself. It's a really big deal. It's a really big deal. But what's insidious, which means unwholesome, about the ego is you can see that the ego will deny the fact that the chooser exists, and plead sincerity and authenticity while it's doing it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes.
The ego, the reason why the ego is such a difficult thing to deal with, because it is so laden with emotional conviction. Right? So the ego, says, yeah, okay, but I know. See? That's the ego's position. He could sit up there all day long and say whatever he wants, but I know, whatever, right? Why? Because I feel it. So the ego is laden, which means heavy with emotional conviction, right? But the authentic self doesn't recognize it, period. But from the part of you that, anyway, wants to be free, the emotional conviction of the ego is pure, as they say in American English, BS. Okay? I don't know if I can make it clearer than that. All right? I don't want to use bad language up here, but this is the hard part, you see, to get people to see that, because the emotional conviction is so convincing, you see? It's so convincing. It's the emotional conviction of the ego's position is so convincing, is so absolutely seductive. And I say absolutely seductive for good reason. So the emotional conviction of the ego is so absolutely seductive, it's only a very sharp, rare individual that can resist it and ultimately can even see through it. Okay? So the only way through, in the challenging moments, the emotional conviction, the overwhelmingly seductive emotional conviction of the ego, is through the unearthing or the enlightenment or the bring light to, bring awareness to, the choosing faculty. So it couldn't be a bigger deal to this. I'm talking about this is the technically, people want to know, how do I do this? I'm telling you, this is the answer to your question.